course, you know, you probably, did you ever meet Mrs. Hink? She was the,
I think I did.
a drummer's mom,
Yeah.
and she was the ma.
Yeah, she was tough as nails.
Yeah, she was pretty tough.
I mean, she was. She was surprising.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because she started out by booking us, and then she would also, you know, she bought the Hammond organ and the Leslies and the PA, and
Yeah, and why did she do that?
she just loved the group, and we couldn't afford to do it. The people that we had just, you know, were,
Did she know what she was buying?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She was a very astute business person because she understood the dynamics of the particular business we were in.
And she had this clever, I think, pretty clever idea where she literally created a little mailer and then got it to every school in South Dakota. And then she did that, that's how she promoted Moss Boys. And then she would do as much follow-up as needed. And then that's how we did our first, from the time I was about a sophomore in high school all the way through then, she was doing booking mainly like that. And it was interesting, I learned probably one of the most valuable lessons in show business that day with her at that time, because we were playing a lot of gigs and we were doing pretty well. And when we were doing really well, that's when Jimmy Thomas came over and wanted to book us. You know?
Really?
Yeah, you know, it was one of those, because it wasn't easy to get people to book your group. And, oh man.
Well, hey man, I would appreciate just hearing the Kevin King story. Now, I know on your website you start out with the early years, but just give me the kind of, I don't want to say Cliff's Notes, but kind of the overview, starting with the first instrument.
I started playing trumpet when I was in second grade. At that time, we lived down in Plainview, Nebraska, and my older sister played trumpet. My mom got me into the trumpet. I played the trumpet, and I just pretty much hated it. I don't. And then in 1964, we moved to Sioux Falls, and I just said, I'm not going to play the
Kevin,
trumpet.
where were you on the night that the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan
I
Show?
was at home watching TV.
Just tell me about it. Set the scene.
We were living at that time, we would have been in Plainview, and we had a black and white TV set. And there was some newspaper mentions about the Beatles before the Ed Sullivan Show. And of course, my mom, of course, looked at the newspaper pictures and said, whoa, you know. And then we used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show every Sunday anyway. And so they came on, and boy, it absolutely turned my head. That was one of the single biggest moments in my musical life for sure. And I decided pretty much at that point that no more trumpet. and it wasn't until years later that I figured out what it was all about, because you can't sing with it. It only plays one note at a time. And I really hated marching. So there you are. There was no reason to pick up the trumpet after I moved to Sioux Falls in '64. And there was a friend that I met in Plainview at that time, and he was in 8th grade and I was in 7th grade. And he and I got to be great friends, and he was a huge Beatles fan too. And we used to just, and neither one of us had really done any musical playing that much, but we, you know, got to be really good friends. Then I moved away, and we kept in touch a little bit, but his name was Max Gronenthal, and we've been in touch off and on ever since, and he's done some really cool stuff. But he came from Plainview. Then I went to Sioux Falls, and I went to 8th grade, and I started picking up the guitar that summer before 8th grade. And my mom just took me down to the Williams Piano Company and gave me a little Beatles book, and my uncle had already given me a guitar. So that worked out, and I just pretty much taught myself to play. And then starting in 8th grade, I put together a little band. And then shortly after that, somewhere there, the Sioux Falls had the Battle of the Bands and the Teen Days. You know, what a great thing. The whole Teensville thing. And it was a great time to be a young kid playing music, because the beauty of it was that the town itself really helped promote that. It was up and down Main Street and Phillips Avenue. They had a truck on every corner, and the bands would play and have a little Battle of the Bands thing, you know. And we put together a band to do that. And then the next year, it was really interesting because it was basically a group we put together 3 weeks before the Battle of the Bands to play the Battle of the Bands, and we came in third, you know. And the next year, during that time, then we had formed Moz Boys, and we actually had real gigs, and we actually knew real songs and wholly everything, and we came in like 8th. You know? Another valuable musical lesson learned.
Must have been the material.
It must have been.
Yeah.
So, but that, and all during those formative years in Sioux Falls was a great place for music. It's in this area that was really interesting was that at Thursday nights at Christ the King, they would have a CYO dance.
Yeah.
You know, and the O'Gorman would have dances sometimes, and then the Arcota would have dances. And
Christ the King is where I first saw the X's.
I saw them there too.
Yeah.
They were a great group.
Oh yeah.
I love that band. Yeah. And then we went to, you go up to Flandreau at the Island Park. I mean, that was an easy drive. And you go across into Minnesota and go up to Pipestone. You go to Remsen, Iowa, if you wanted to, or you could go up into all the different areas in South Dakota that had the ballrooms. And you see that we thinking nothing of driving 125 miles to go see the Flippers in Lane, you know. And it was so great, and Milltown and all those
You ever
great
play
ballrooms.
Lane?
Many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The band that played there too.
There was a couple of guys that
the
owned it,
Deneke
brothers.
The Deneke brothers. They were both like 12'9"
They
or
were
something.
huge guys.
Huge. And they were the only law in town.
Exactly. Well, and there was half of the place was set up for kids to dance. The other half, and the other side was where they sold beer.
Yeah.
And nobody ever gave them any trouble.
What was the high point for Moz Boys?
I think there were a handful of things. One of them was the fact we got to play the Macamo Club, which was a big deal. We were warm-up act for the Mob, you know, a couple of times. That was a big deal for us. Playing Lane and Tyndall and all these different ballrooms was a wonderful experience. We didn't get into Iowa much. Once in a while we'd go over to Orange City, but then Jimmy Thomas would book us and we'd play in Minnesota quite a bit. And we had, at one point, we had a bus, and we were...
Oh, I remember your bus.
It was really fun, you know. And it was just a time when we were doing a lot of different types of music, and then Chicago came. Yeah, and then Moz Boys, we went to college, and that's when we hired Jim Goings to play drums with us. And at that time, Jimmy was only, I think he was 15, and we were freshmen in college.
I remember that now, and Jimmy was talking about that when I interviewed him earlier. I didn't know that he was in the band. I didn't know that what he did, but that's amazing.
I remember,
he was great though.
He was a great drummer, and I remember what happened was that they used to, at Terrace Park, they used to have these it was like Sunday afternoons or something. It'd be some kind of concert thing, and bands would come and set up and play at Terrace Park. And for some reason, I just wanted to go this one time, and I'm there. And I see this drummer playing, well, I think Bud Zerath was on bass, and I don't remember who else was playing with the group. And this drummer was absolutely blowing me away. He was so good, and he was singing his heart out, and he was just really talented kid. And so I made a point to go meet him that day. And then about 6 months later, when Randy Hink decided to go to the University of South Dakota and leave the group, called up Jimmy, and he just fit right in. It was really fun.
But Randy's mom was Ma.
Yeah.
So what happened to Moz Boys?
It was a tough deal. We